Hey there, beautiful people. Welcome back. We're talking about something so important today because I can't tell you how many times I have sat with a couple talking about their birth options, and I hear the woman and she's wanting this beautiful body-led biological birth experience, and then her partner or her mother or other family member, they think that she's being foolish. They think she's being naive. They think she's being selfish, and they think she's being dangerous. And that just breaks my heart, because I'm here to say with confidence that home birth is a safe and reliable, and it's a practical, common sense option for a healthy, low-risk woman that's wanting a natural birth. And you know what? If you're wanting a natural birth, I just want you to know you're not being negligent or foolish. You're being wise. And I want to dedicate this whole Apothecary Wisdom to explaining why home birth is way better than hospital birth. And really, I'm so used to talking to you, the pregnant woman, and in this video I am going to be talking to you, but I'm also talking to your partner and your mom and your mother-in-law. So I'm asking you to watch this video and then share it with them, especially share it with them because they don't understand the value and the legitimacy of home birth, and they don't have a context or a framework for it. So once you share it with them, they can understand where you're coming from, and then they can support you to have the birth experience that you're wanting. Okay, so this is our first time meeting. My name is Maria Chaudhry, and I'm a mother and I'm a midwife. And as a mother, I gave birth at home. And as a midwife, I have assisted and supported pregnant women and families. I have provided all their prenatal care, their childbirth education, been to their birth, supported them in labor, and their postpartum recovery, and their breastfeeding support for hundreds and hundreds of women. Right? And so I just want you to know that this video right now is a live video, and it's a conversation about why home birth is better than hospital birth. But I'm in the front of the camera and Heaven's behind the camera. So I'm encouraging you to ask questions and share your experiences. And when I'm talking about something, give a heart and give a thumbs up and comment while I'm talking about it. And so then I can know we're on the same page and we're communicating. And then after the video is over, I'll respond to all the comments, okay? So if you're watching this later on the recording on YouTube, go ahead and push like and subscribe right now and ring the notification bell, especially if you like getting videos about birth and herbs and women's empowerment from a midwifery and herbal perspective. All right, so this video is committed to and dedicated to sharing with you the benefits of home birth. And so I'm going to go through the primary, most popular benefits of home birth. And then I'm going to share with you my 3 personal favorite reasons that I really feel like sets home birth apart from from hospital birth. Okay? So, without further ado, when people come to me, like clients, and I had consultations and they were talking to me about home birth and comparing it to hospital birth, this is what I used to say to them. In one way, you have one foot deeply rooted in the ancient art of midwifery, right? And then your other foot is rooted in modern medical attention and modern medical care. So metaphorically, in one way, you're worlds away from the machine that goes beep and that time clock. And then at the same time, you're a phone call away from state-of-the-art medical care when you need it, right? So that's how I would describe it. But I'm going to go through this list of the benefits of home birth, okay? And I'm going to kind of roll through them. All right. So the first thing I want you to remember is that midwives are experts at natural birth, and they understand the variation of normal, and they understand when something's outside of the range of normal, and they know how to get medical care and medical attention the moment you go beyond normal. And at home, you receive evidence-based care and evidence-based monitoring prenatally, in labor, and postpartum. And you also have professional prenatal and birth care. And you also have access to all the necessary labs and tests and ultrasounds and emergency medical attention if you need it. But when you're at home, the risk of infection is reduced. And at home, there are certain complications that are better at home than in the hospital, like shoulder dystocia, because the woman is not medicated, and she's not sedated, and she's not tethered to the bed, so she can move around and she can be an active participant to help the baby be born. What else? So risk of cesarean birth is reduced at home births. There's fewer medical interventions, and that means there's fewer inductions. That means there's less perineal trauma and lacerations. That means you get to have true delayed cord clamping. That means you get to make informed decisions without the pressure of the medical community judging you. That means you get to have no mother-baby separation. You're always with your baby at all times. That means you get individualized and personalized care. At home, we promote family togetherness, right? And also just another thing, you don't have to get into the car and drive on the interstate in labor, and you don't have to put your newborn baby in a car seat and bring them home. And then also at home, you get to have a water birth, and you get to be more yourself and express yourself. And you're more comfortable at home. And when you're more comfortable at home, then you're better able to relax, and then you're better able to cope with labor. And what I mean by that is at home you have freedom of movement. You get to create your birth environment and your atmosphere, like your lighting and your music and your incense and your birth affirmations, right? And the temperature. And then also at home you get to eat food, and you get to drink food and drink water, and then afterwards you get to have your victory meal. And at home you get to have an herb bath. And at home, if you want your other children to be there, they can be there. And if you want your pets to be there, they can be there, right? And at home, you get to keep your placenta. You get to make art out of it, or make medicine out of it, or bury it. You get to do whatever you want with it. And at home, you get to see what your body will do if it's uninterrupted and if it's fully supported. And that is really a beautiful, beautiful list of reasons why home is a safe place to give birth. But I want to share with you why I think my 3 favorite reasons for giving birth at home. But before I do, I want to invite you to put in the comments, are you thinking about having a home birth? And why are you thinking about having a home birth? And what is your family saying? Are they supportive of you? Or would they rather you have a hospital birth? So fill us in. Let's hear what's coming up for you. Okay, so my favorite reasons for choosing a home birth, the first one is time. And so there's a lot of pieces to this, so let me break it down. So let's start with, how does time show up in prenatal care? So when you go to the hospital, or you're choosing a hospital birth, and you're going to your typical prenatal visit at the doctor's office, this is generally speaking, but you're going to go to your prenatal visit, and you're going to wait for about an hour, and then you're going to see the doctor for about 10 minutes. And then when you go to a midwife visit and go to her office, you're going to wait for about 10 minutes, and then you're going to see her and visit with her for about an hour. And now, if the doctors and nurses can perform their entire prenatal visit in 10 minutes, what are the midwives doing in the other 50 minutes? Right? And so, let me tell you, a typical midwife visit consists of all the same things you get when you go to the doctor. So you're going to get your blood pressure checked and your pulse and a urine analysis. And they're going to look for signs of infection, and they're going to ask you the questions if you've had headaches or dizziness or swelling or bleeding. They're going to look for signs of preterm labor. They're going to palpate the baby, and they're going to determine the position, and they're going to listen to the baby. And sure, I suppose you can do all of that in 10 minutes, especially if you don't explain what you're doing, why it's important, or share any of the results. Okay, and here's another thing. So midwives, we take our time, right? We explain why all of this is so important. And so that each client understands her micro decisions that she's making throughout her day, they will ultimately influence her pregnancy, her birth, and ultimately they influence her empowerment and her sovereignty. And midwives take their time to determine the fetal position, like they'll palpate to determine the fetal position. And they explain to their partner how to palpate and determine the position. Because optimal fetal positioning is one of the pillars of a safe birth. Because when your baby is in a good position, then that helps the woman start labor on her own naturally. It helps the baby progress naturally, and then it leads to a woman that's pushing her baby out with less fetal distress and less perineal trauma. And this type of education takes time. And then midwives talk about the value of nutrition and hydration and herbs and exercise and meditation. And midwives get on the floor with them and do the pelvic rocks with them. Midwives sit with them and practice the breathing techniques so they can learn to relax their mind and relax their body so they can cope with labor. Midwives ask her how she's feeling, what she's dreaming about, what she's excited about, what she's afraid of. Because birth should be and is and should be fulfilling and exciting experience instead of her biggest fear. Midwives take time to establish trust in the birth process, trust in her body, trust in her baby, trust in herself, trust in the professional relationship between her and her midwife, and midwives establish trust in the skills that the midwives possess. And so midwives also take time to answer all of their questions, and then they tell stories. They tell stories that make you laugh, and they tell stories that make you cry. Midwives know their clients beyond their blood pressure and beyond their name, right? We might forget your partner's name, but we know you. And this sort of care takes commitment. And any sort of commitment is going to take time. Right? And so time shows up at the end of pregnancy. So if a mother goes over her due date, midwives have the perspective that we are biological people and the birth will happen and you will eventually go into labor. And we just need to be patient. Right? Yes, we need to monitor and make sure that everything is okay, but we don't need to rush to an induction just because you went over your due date, or because your due date's on a Friday, or your due date's on a Saturday, or a holiday, or your care provider's scheduled vacation. So how does time show up in labor, right? So from my perspective, one of the most damaging obstetrical interventions is the time clock. So we are women. We are not machines. We're processes, right? And so the medical model of labor and birth, when women are in labor, they're expected to progress according to an outdated system. It's called the Friedmans Curve. And what that is women are starting active labor at 4 centimeters and they're expected to dilate a centimeter per hour, and it should take an hour to push your baby out. And so that is outdated, and yet nonetheless there's so much pressure to perform and to progress in labor. And if you don't perform or progress in labor, then you're going to need assistance, and that assistance is going to be to augment your labor, and they're going to do that with medications, either Cytotec or with Pitocin, or they're going to artificially rupture your membranes. And all of those things carry risk, and all of those things interrupt the biological process of birth. So on your own time, I highly encourage you to study about the Friedmans Curve and how unnecessary medical interventions actually lead to the obstetrical complications that they're trying to avoid. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy, and it's a cycle. And I just ask that you don't misinterpret what I'm trying to say, because what I'm trying to say is there is a vast difference between unnecessary medical interventions and necessary medical attention. Okay, so time shows up in a home birth very differently. So when a woman is in labor, midwives are aware of the time, but they're not watching the clock. They're watching her. They're watching the baby. They're watching how the labor is progressing. Does she have energy? Is she hydrated? Does she have the willpower to keep going? Does the baby sound good? Does she have signs of infection? If all things are good, it doesn't really matter what the time clock says. You keep going. So, and midwives, when she's in labor, when the client's in labor, we encourage her to rest when she's tired, to get up and walk and move around when she has energy, to eat, to sleep, to go to the bathroom. When you want to keep a labor moving, you keep the woman moving and you change it up. So in a hospital birth, the time clock starts when you get admitted to the hospital. And then once you get admitted, you don't get to eat, you don't get to drink, you ask permission to go to the bathroom, you ask permission to get out of the bed. So how does time show up in postpartum care? So at the hospital, they're very concerned about, how many times the baby nurses and for how long, and you got to stay awake for the baby to be in your room, and you got to document all that stuff. And then they have all these tests that are done on their schedule, and then all of a sudden they can do all this stuff that's super important, and then all of a sudden you get checked out, right? And you get checked out with a bunch of paper, and you have a 6-week visit scheduled. You just saw the doctor every week where the baby was inside, and now you just gave birth, had this major event, and they just did all the stuff that was so important, and now they'll just see you in 6 weeks, right? And so postpartum care looks very different from a midwifery perspective. So midwives go so much more in depth at this time because we know how important it is. So midwives come to your house at the 24 hours after the birth to check in on you. They come to your house 3 days after the birth. They come to your house at 1 week after the birth. They check in on you at 2 weeks after the birth, at 4 weeks after the birth, and ultimately at 6 weeks after the birth. And then I know some midwives, they check in on you at 3 months after the birth. Because you know what happens at 3 months? That's when postpartum depression starts to set in. That's when women quit breastfeeding. That's when women go back to work. That's when women think they should be all better because society says they're past 6 weeks, they should be better. In a lot of ways, they're recovered, and in many ways, they're not. So what I'm trying to illustrate is the importance of taking your time to go through the entire process from pregnancy through birth and through long-term postpartum care. And it's like taking the time and being present and allowing it to unfold is one of the hallmarks of good and thorough midwifery care. So I want to check in with you in the comments. Let me know what's coming up for you when I'm talking about time And I just want to remind you, your comments matter, because somebody else is watching this video and she's trying to make decisions just like you are, and she's faced with similar challenges and similar ways she's trying to navigate the world. And so your comments will support her. All right, so my second favorite reason for choosing a home birth is perspective. Okay, so the midwifery model of care sees birth as a natural, healthy, biological process. And sure, it requires nourishment and support and education and time to allow the woman to go through the process so she can give birth safely on her own terms. But the medical model of care sees pregnancy and birth as something that needs to be managed and controlled in order for it to be safe. Midwives see the sensation or the pain in labor as sensation with a purpose. The medical model of care sees the pain as a problem, and that it should be numb, and could be numb because you don't really have to feel it anyways. And besides, a numb woman is a compliant woman, and she's really easy to take care of. And so the midwifery model of care sees the mother and baby as one entity, right? They're not separate. They shouldn't be separated, right? Babies are aware, sentient, feeling beings, and they want to be with their mother, and we need to respect that, right? The medical model promotes separation. They immediately clamp and cut the cord. The baby has a doctor, the mother has a doctor, and it's to the hospital, it totally makes rational good sense that the baby could stay in the nursery for hours. Besides, there's a skilled care provider in there monitoring their vitals and making sure their vitals are normal. All right, my third favorite reason is choice of words. So, let me know in the comments how you'll respond to these things. And I want you to imagine with me. Imagine a healthy woman. She's wanting a natural birth. She's in labor. She has strong contractions about 3-4 minutes apart. The baby sounds great. Everything's going great. And she's about to get her cervix checked. So tell me put in the comments how you're going to feel after each one of these. Okay. I'm going to come in. Hey there. How are you doing? It looks like it's time for me to check your cervix. Ooh. I see your cervix is so tight. And you're only 4 centimeters. Dang. What time did you start labor? Looking at the clock. It's been 8 hours. And you're just 4 centimeters? Taking the hand out, glove off. So I know you wanted a natural birth, but if you think this is hard now, it's about to get much harder, and we need to see some progress, or I'm going to have to start the Pitocin. And if I start the Pitocin, it's going to be way worse. So I know you want a natural birth, but are you sure you don't want an epidural? And besides, the anesthesiologist is about to leave and about to go home. And if you change your mind later, you might not get the epidural when it gets really hard. Versus, hey, what do you think about checking your cervix to see where you're at in labor? And then wait and get permission. Okay, will you let me know when you're ready? Okay, so now you're starting to check your cervix. Okay, you're going to feel my hand on your thigh, and you let me know when I can touch you. Okay, I'm starting to touch you now. Okay, checking the cervix. Whoa, the head is so low, and it's applied to your cervix really nicely. Oh my gosh, you're already 4 centimeters. You're doing it. Whoa, and you're having these nice strong contractions. Girl, you're about to kick into the next stage of labor really soon, and these contractions are really productive. I know it seems like you've been working hard for a long time, and you have been working hard for a long time. But just because it's taken you 8 hours to get where you are, that doesn't mean a thing. This is just where you are right now. It has no bearing on where you're about to be, right? Especially with these strong contractions. And listen to that baby. That baby sounds great. You and your baby are making a great team. You're doing a good job. I'm proud of you. So, which one of those two scenarios is going to lead to a woman successfully pushing her baby out naturally? And which one is going to lead to unnecessary medical interventions? And when that's you laying on your back with somebody's finger up on your cervix, talking to you, how would you like to be talked to? And what would you like them to say to you? Let me know in the comments. Okay, so, I just want to say, I really sincerely hope that this video highlights and illustrates the differences between the home and hospital, especially if you're wanting a natural birth. If you're wanting an uninterrupted biological birth, then put yourself in the situation where that's possible. You can't be mad at the hospital for interrupting you and doing what they do. That's what they do, right? If you want a natural biological birth, go to the birth experts. It really matters who you hire and who you surround yourself with. That's going to influence how you give birth. And how you give birth matters. Not only does it matter to you, it matters to your family and to your babies and to your descendants, but it matters to all of us as women, as a community. All of us are wanting to have safer births, more gentle births. We're wanting to promote peace and wellness and vitality throughout women and throughout the circles of women around the world. So I really want you to know that choosing a home birth is really amazing. But I want to be honest with you. Home birth is a lot of personal responsibility, and it requires careful planning and support and communication, a skilled midwife, an investment of your time and of your commitment. But it's so worth it. So worth it. So, if you want to know how to hire a midwife, I made a guide for you so you can download it. 50 questions to ask your potential midwife. And then as a bonus, there are 25 questions to ask your doula. And that is linked for you below. And also, if you want more information about planning your home birth and writing a home birth plan with a template, I linked that below. And also, if you want to know about the supplies you're going to need, there's a link to your supplies below. And if you want to hear a bunch of really beautiful, empowering home birth stories of women that I personally helped, there's a playlist to those stories linked below. And also, one more thing that's really important, I also linked a bunch of resources that are national organizations so that you can make really educated and empowered and informed birth decisions, so you can make decisions to have a safe birth and an informed birth and an active birth. And all those resources are for you below. And I really appreciate you listening. Remember, your birth matters. Okay? So go ahead, push like and subscribe to this video, and subscribe to our channel, ring the bell. I'll see you in the next video. And until next time, my friends, breathe deep and always walk in beauty.